Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to join today's webinar. Welcome. Today we're talking about hardware asset management. Excited new product coming out in the Paris release. So as you join the webinar, you will be muted and your camera should be off. As this is a Zoom webinar, we appreciate you staying muted through the session just to prevent any background noise. So I'm Ryan Wood-Taylor, Product Marketing with IT Asset Management, and I will be your host for today. So we have a couple speakers with us today. Eric Farrington, Director of Product Management in our ITAM business unit. Eric leads our Hardware Asset Management product team and is responsible for bringing this offering to market, and he spent a lifetime in this space. Yvette Matthews is Vice President of Services at one of our top partners, ITS. So thanks for joining, guys. Yvette also has a very deep wealth of experience in this area. And Yvette and the ITS team is a partner you can definitely lean on to get you to those business outcomes. So we're lucky to have both of them. And yeah, thank you again for both of you for joining us today. This is our safe harbor notice, letting you know that what is discussed today is forward-looking and subject to change. Our hardware asset management product is currently available in early access. However, it's generally available in our Paris release, which is expected for September, so right around the corner. So we have a lot to get to today, a ton to cover, but we'll do our best to get to all of it for you. So, first we'll hear from Yvette on the need for hardware asset management, the need for a program, and the challenges that customers can have, and why a program with proper governance and processes is so foundational to the business. And then we'll hear from Eric, who will give you a preview on our hardware asset management product and why doing the full life cycle of IT on a single platform is a no-brainer. Having all your asset tasks, records, workflows centrally located in one data model, the same place you plan, request, fulfill, operate, service, and retire IT, right? All on the Now platform. And then I'm looking forward to hearing any stories Eric and Yvette have to maybe share from their past lives on clients they've seen with, let's say, suboptimal programs, what that meant for the business and how putting the right capabilities in place, really turned those clients around. So, and then hopefully at the time we did save some time for Q&A. And we'll try to get to as many of the questions as we can. We have 60 minutes, but we also want to be respectful of your time. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Yvette. Yvette, take us away.
Thanks, Ryan. I am Yvette Matthews, Vice President of Services at ITS. A little bit about ITS before we get started. We're a 30-year-old company who have been focused on asset management from our initial work on the Altiris platform, if you guys are familiar with that, to our specialization in IT asset management on the ServiceNow platform today. We're focused on customer outcomes, and we want to provide an unmatched customer experience for every one of our clients. I run a practitioner-led team, meaning we have asset managers that we've brought in from industry that help us focus on our clients. We have more than 50 years combined experience in developing asset programs and solving IT asset management related challenges. Our implementation methodology is pretty simple. We focus not just on assets, but on ensuring that your underlying CMDB is also healthy. We begin our projects by focusing on helping our clients build out their programs and developing or improving on existing processes to support any sort of future work on the tool. We build applications as well. I have a team of folks that build some amazing applications that help us populate our CMDB, which in turn will help us augment our asset data. And we focus exclusively on ServiceNow. So in order to provide the best possible outcomes for our customers on the platform, we've chosen to only work on one particular platform, and our platform of choice is, of course, ServiceNow. All right, Ryan, let's get to the fun content of why every company needs hardware asset management. So most organizations typically spend about 45% of their IT budget on hardware. It seems like a huge investment if you think about it. That's a large chunk of change to be spent on things that could get lost, go missing, or break. One of the things that we like to discuss about spend is remember, it's not just end user compute. When I talk to my clients, a lot of times they're focused either on the data center or end user compute, and they've forgotten all of the other IT assets that exist in their organization, from storage and backup to networking equipment to our latest entrant, which is the Internet of Things. You're going to find that Internet of Things, as it becomes more prevalent in your organization, is going to be something that you're going to want to have a handle on. Remember that every IT asset that we own has risk associated with it, not just spend. So every piece of hardware is an entry point into your organization's infrastructure. So ensuring that we understand what we own so we can manage it, in understanding that it's secured, is going to be critical to moving forward with any hardware asset management program that you're trying to put in place. Hey, Ryan, can we take a look at the next slide? So our estimated IT spend, as we said, is about 45%, and it varies by our industry that we're talking about, with the average being 33.28% of IT budget as a percent of revenue. If organizations are choosing to invest in IT, ITAM really does have a responsibility to manage that investment prudently. When we talk about managing assets, we're also talking about managing all those inherent risks associated with them as well. When we think about our IT assets, we have to think about all the rules and regulations, depending on which country you're in, what region you're in, et cetera, that are impacted by our choices that we make around IT assets. If we're talking about our medical devices, we want to ensure that the data we're collecting and storing as part of our asset repository is data that's not governed under HIPAA, and if it is, that we're putting the appropriate securities and safeties in place to ensure that data doesn't go anywhere it shouldn't. So if you think about what your current IT spend is, I'm just curious, and you can either put it in the Q&A if you have questions, or we could talk about it outside of this venue, of what your estimated IT spend is, and where do you see your organization spending the majority of its money? Is it on your data centers, or is it on your end user compute environment, or is it somewhere completely different? So let's talk about what IT asset management actually is. Asset management is a set of practices involving the physical, financial, and contractual information that support a full IT asset lifecycle. So from the time that we request a device to the time that we retire a device, it needs to be managed in some fashion. So we can only manage what we know we own. So one of the first things that I find as a challenge to my customers is knowing what we bought. Without having good IT process in place, I may not know what hardware has been brought into my organization. If I think about it, if you don't have a good procurement process in place, your end users could go on to Amazon, or they could go to Best Buy. They could go anywhere and start procuring their own hardware. There's a lot of risk with that. Are they appropriately secured? How do we join it to the domain? A lot of these things that we're talking about are things that seem like common sense, except if we don't have processes, end users do the thing that they think is the right thing to do in order to continue to be able to work. I don't ever think people are being malicious when I talk to my clients. I think they're trying to get their job done the best way they know how. So are we buying only what we need? Again, this has to do with having the right processes in place, knowing how many of what type of device do we have, how many we should have, having an appropriate safety stock. All of the inventory functionalities that we use need to fall under IT asset management as the gateway into the IT organization. Are we using what we've purchased? One of the big sticking points is having equipment that's sitting around that isn't being used. I bet if I ask any one of you in the attendees list if you have unused IT assets that maybe are sitting in a desk drawer, or someone has stored in a closet for later use, they've got them squirreled away in a desk somewhere, you're going to say, yep, that happens. And it happens not because people are purposefully trying to waste money. or spend money on things that we don't need or get new items. It's really usually about process. They don't understand that they could easily request a new item, so they keep them on the off chance that somebody in their organization or in their department might need that type of asset. Last but not least, can we prove what we bought? That's our compliance piece that we talk about. When we're talking about disposing of assets, I want to be able to prove how I got rid of that asset, how it left my organization, and to ensure that when it did leave my organization, it was done properly and not just tossed into the recycle bin. We want to ensure that we have documentation around our certificates of disposal. We want to make sure that we've sent them off to probably a green facility so we're not polluting landfills. I have lots of stories about people who maybe didn't do the right thing when it came to disposal and it came back to haunt them later. So I like to ensure that when I'm working with my clients, one of the key things we talk about isn't just managing it while we can see it, it's managing the data and understanding where it went when it left. So Ryan, let's take a look at the next slide. When we're talking about tracking hardware, if we don't use an integrated system, if we're using spreadsheets, if we have different teams who are focusing on just their area with no integrated program, what you're going to find is at some point, you're going to start losing your assets. Think about it this way. Your end user wants an asset. They're going to request it using whatever request mechanism you have. If it's ServiceNow, that's great. It's a front end to getting to our hardware data. If they're using a walk up to some service desk person and saying, hey, I need a computer, or standing at the asset manager's doorway of their cubicle saying, my stuff's broke, I need a new one, we're already introducing some inherent risk to the process. There's going to be no visibility into our requests that we're getting. It's a lot of manual effort, and I know all of the asset managers on the call really don't want to spend a lot of time doing a lot of manual effort. We want to make this as automated as possible and as easy for the end users to use as they can. Anytime we have these manual processes, everything becomes significantly slower. If we don't have any sort of self-service, that means every single request has to be touched by someone before we can do something with it. If we don't have an integrated tool, how's the help desk supposed to see what the person already has? Maybe they already have 2 or 3 PCs that they keep asking for replacements on. And if that's the case, that's going to be problematic. In the future, how do we know what we need to refresh? How do we know how to get that equipment back? When we get to the procurement piece, if we're not integrating our procurement in with our asset functionality on the same platform, what you're going to see is POs getting cut, no one validating that what we ordered is what we received. That's going to cause some problems later on with invoicing and may cause problems with our warranties if the serial numbers of what we ordered don't match the serial numbers of what showed up. As you can see, you're going to have a lot of frustrated people because it's going to be a slow, painful process. Putting everything in the right context and putting them all on the same platform is going to be able to allow us to have better visibility and better security around our assets. So that being said, next slide, please, Ryan. Having disconnected tools and manual processes increase our cost and risk. I know I've said cost and risk a lot because sometimes we like to think of asset management as just a financial function, but ultimately, we're also part of helping security secure the items that we own and enabling us to be able to feel confident when we're speaking with executive leadership that we know what we have, we know that it has the appropriate security measures associated with it, we know who's using it, we know how they're using it. If we can get rid of all the disconnected spreadsheets or separate third-party tools, et cetera, we're going to have a better outcome for our end users and for our organization by building out processes that are automated. Now, remember, I said process. It's not, it has to be written down or it's not a process. It's just an idea. That's going to eliminate a lot of those touch points where we end up making mistakes or keying something in incorrectly. So Ryan, I think you've got a question for our team or our panel, our participants at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Yvette. So yeah, we do have a poll. I guess, Katerine, are you able to see the poll? I don't have the poll ability to push the poll from my panel here. But
Sure.
the question is, how are you managing hardware assets today? Are you using ServiceNow IT Asset Management? Are you using a third-party tool, maybe a homegrown tool? Maybe you're not sure, it's not your primary domain, but you're interested, or, of course, spreadsheets, right? Don't tell anyone. And so, yeah, just curious, wanted to get a feel for the audience there. So, yeah, so I guess, Yvette, what would you expect kind of the mix of answers to be from this audience here? Any guesses on what we may see?
I'm going to guess we're going to see some people, quite a few of them, using the ServiceNow ITSM Asset Management, but I'm also going to see some people who are currently using spreadsheets. I see that a lot in my customers, mostly because they're managed by groups who maybe aren't interacting as much with the ServiceNow platform, or they haven't spent the time to build it out, and those spreadsheets are something that they're currently using today.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, spreadsheets are better than nothing, right? So there's a known need for some type of hardware asset management, and you got to start somewhere. And so, if you don't have a better option, that's certainly right. You got to baby steps. But as we know, spreadsheets are manual, and with how much IT changes, every minute, every hour, there's new hardware deployed, purchased, retired. It's tough to keep up with manual processes. So thanks for publishing the polls here. So is the audience able to see the polls?
Yes, I believe so.
Excellent. Great. So yeah, so it looks like the majority of you are using ITSM Asset Management, which is great news. And Eric Farrington, who's also with us today, will go into why that's great to have that base core asset management in place. That hardware asset management can certainly build on for those advanced features that are certainly needed. But across the board, kind of a mixed results. Third-party tools, certainly not sure. Spreadsheets. Yvette, anything jump out here from the results?
This is pretty much what I was expecting to see. I love the fact they're using the ITSM asset management tool, because that means they're going to have the data that they need to start using new hardware asset management. And the same goes with spreadsheets. If we're using a spreadsheet, at least it's probably organized. It might not be organized exactly the same way that we would organize it inside of ServiceNow, but it's a great starting point for us to be able to start using ServiceNow in order to capture all of the hardware asset data that we're looking for.
Excellent. All right. So, yeah, so up next, Eric Farrington, do you want to take us away?
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for bringing us in here. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our friends around the globe. Tremendously excited day here as we're going to dig in and talk about some hardware asset management, or HAM, specifically the new product that is launching in our Paris release this Q3. And just really, again, long time coming to see the product improvement, but we're glad it's here. It's the start of some great new features that are coming out of the roadmap, and excited to talk about them today. So, first, before we get into the HAM specific, let's talk a little bit about, and Yvette, thank you for joining us, had some great messages coming in. When we talk about IT asset management, specifically hardware, there is a strong underpinning dependency for data accuracy, right? And when we talk about not being able to display cost savings or display proper risk assessments, it's really coming back to, am I accurate and can I prove it? So when we look at ServiceNow and how asset management operates today, we really leverage that single platform. This massive platform of transactional and work management, that we can align our asset workflows to really be able to drive predictive outcomes, bring in automated updates, bring in some of the new normalization feature sets to really strengthen that underpinning accuracy and dependency that we're going to get from our asset records, so that we can propel the value into our businesses for things like strategic planning, What's my life cycle outlook look like? What's future refresh look like? How do I know what's truly deployed? How do I know that we have serviceable quantities in our data centers and our infrastructure and our end user computer environments for even support staffing? All of these things are possible as valued outcomes coming back from that core accuracy. Let's jump to the next slide. One of the core pieces here that when we drive forward, just as ServiceNow as a whole, this new normal that we've all been forced to embrace, right? We need insights to our operation, particularly because our workforces have been displaced. We also want to make sure that we're driving those efficient workflows as we're transitioning maybe back to the office, staying in that work from home motion. It does not change that underlying dependency that our businesses need smarter ways to workflow, need better ways to deliver that accuracy around our asset data. Next slide. So when we look at, we say here, behind every great experience is a great workflow. We see the asset data being core to those experiences. Whether it's our IT workflows, our employee workflows, our customer workflows, the app integrations that they're pushing and pulling data in and out of ServiceNow. We want to be that connective tissue, that integrated process for driving action through your business. But within that, often so many times, the what in the equation is our asset record. What's the user requesting? What is broken? What do we need to perform? What server is that application running on, right? So having that data quality, that accuracy allows to be a pivotal role on the Now platform for being able to reach out and connect through these digital workflows to deliver that best-in-class, out-of-the-box product for our customers. We can have such powerful capabilities such as machine learning, such as predictive analytics, but at its core needs to be that dependable asset record. And that allows us to also drive efficiencies into our workforce to be able to know that when we go service a ticket, that the asset's going to be where we're looking for it. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we look at ServiceNow being this central system for the IT record, we know that finance has their ERP. We know that IT needs that central system of record, and ServiceNow is that connected platform. Okay. We want to have our asset coverage. When we talk about the IT asset management group, we're talking about any asset, anywhere. Software, hardware, on-prem, hybrid clouds. Being able to know what we have available and how we're consuming these IT assets allow us to develop an optimized approach for being able to develop and maintain visibility to those risk items, or even be able to apply cost savings or cost optimization into these environments. So when we run ITAM, where we're planning, service, and operating IT, this centralized asset governance and visibility connected with that CMDB data in one platform, one architecture, one data model allows us to drive value to the business. And then these features that we're beginning to focus on within HAM allow us to drive up our maturity level of that internal asset practice. Next slide, please. So let's talk about HAM. What's in it? What's there? What are we getting in Paris? What's coming? What's it mean for that core asset module that we saw in our poll, 58%, they're utilizing that core asset management today. We designed hardware asset management to be a lift, to bring in brand new functionality, to bring in mature, prescriptive, automated workflows and outcomes on top of that core asset module. We want to leverage those asset records, those model records, those stockroom records, everything you're using today, we need. We want to be able to bring new processes, automation, guided workflow in to enhance and protect the data quality and the efficient work management that our workforce counts on. So when we look at features, and I'm going to walk through some of these features, but when we talk about what's coming in hardware asset management in Paris, hardware model normalization, being able to bring in a content library and tie our discovered or imported or manually created models to a standard. Be able to link those to manufacturer lifecycle dates for tactical and strategic planning, for risk awareness of when I'm going to hit end of extended support and I need to enter into an extended support contract. Okay? Being able to drive prescriptive flows to our customers Our customers are saying, I need a standard practice that I can deliver critical life cycle processes like stock orders, like my asset requests, like my disposal. And I need the flexibility to understand what this standard I'm starting from is, but also the flexibility to be able to say, you know what, I might need to be able to configure that last 10%, add my approvals, add a conditional task. Maybe we're shredding hard drives on site and I want to drop a task in. I need an easy way to do that. We also then want to account for what's there and drive automation into those ITSM process tickets that we're using every day. Okay, we're going to bring in some mobile features for audit accuracy and also talk about a new dashboard. But again, I want to emphasize here, hardware asset management is a lift, a brand new capability. It's a lift in automation on top of what you have today. And we want to be able to drive our customers to a higher degree of hardware asset management maturity by a quick activation through these features. Next slide, please, Ryan. Okay, so again, what our call to action here is when we look at that asset lifecycle, we need to be able to solve for that data dependency, that process efficiency all the way around that wheel. So from the time that we are planning to request an asset all the way through its end of life, we want to have connected process, we want to have automated actions, and we want to have those updates so that our workforce can continue to service the customer and they don't need to worry about updating multiple records in a database, which is time consuming, tedious, and also opens us up to that risk of error. Next slide, please. So we're leveraging, key features within the ServiceNow platform. We align up front to that service catalog, that service portal, giving our users that one-stop shop that when they say, I want or I need hardware, we can map those catalog items to that product catalog items. We can map that to the service catalog for requests. Now our customers can come in, place those requests in a central place. They can also check their statuses. And one thing to call out here, we added from the mobile application, right? We want to be able to have that employee view into what assets they're assigned to. So now I can see on that end user mobile app, I can see my locker. I can see hardware and consumables that are assigned to my profile, and I have the ability to raise an incident. So this is about connecting the employee to the experience of assets that are in front of them without having to go through that burden of waiting on hold with the service desk. My computer falls off my desk, cracks the screen, I dump my coffee on it. I should be able to go into my mobile app, identify that asset that's assigned to me, raise a ticket in just a couple of swipe actions. Next slide, please. But when that request comes in, we want that central workflow to connect our process and drive us forward. So we want to focus on these single pane of glass views, these repeatable activities that when we have our supply chain teams, our procurement teams, our inventory managers, they can view these sourcing requests and say, I see a request in from a user, they're looking for a MacBook Pro, how many do I have available in stock? Can I consume that stock, utilize what's already in place today, or do I have that way also to step out and create a purchase order, buy net new? Next slide, please. As we continue to move forward, things that we continue to bring into the product are how do we leverage that mobile app, that mobile experience to reduce manual input and conversely reduce the manual error. So previously on the platform, we've had the manual type in for our receiving process. Okay, in the Orlando release, we brought in the mobile agent app. I can scan a batch of assets by their barcode and receive those against a purchase order. Again, we want to connect these enhanced experiences to streamline the input and the update to maintain our asset record accuracy. Next slide, please. So we also want to develop, and when we look at hardware asset management, let's bring this brand new dashboard in front. Let's create a command center for our hardware asset managers. We want to be able to leverage our advanced reporting engine at Performance Analytics. Let's bring that in too. And let's give guided reports that aren't just footprint reports on my asset estates. We can only see so many reports of how many assets do I have in status X. We want to be able to drive in action-driven reports because as an asset manager, I want to look at this screen and manage my day-to-day. So I want visibility into open transfer orders. I want visibility into how many assets are coming up for end of warranty. I want to look and see how many open disposal orders do I have that are pending that final disposal documentation. Easily accessing within a few clicks something that's running late, something that hasn't been delivered on time, I can contact that vendor and I have all the reference information in front of me. Okay, so we want to continue to drive all this underpinning data from our records and surface them into these new views like the HAM dashboard. Next slide, please. Okay. So I touched briefly earlier on normalization, but I'm going to dig in a little more detail here. We want to manage and we want to have a clean representation of our model estates. So our Hardware Normalization connects that content library to your ServiceNow instance. You receive weekly updates from our content service team, and what our engine does is it takes your values that you have discovered, entered, imported, or manually entered for manufacturer, for model name, for model number, and we're synchronizing that to our standard catalog values. Okay? We're doing a couple things as well. Once we fully normalize that record, we're bringing all of that manufacturer lifecycle data in, such as end of sale, end of support, end of extended support, end of life. We talked about that weekly feed that you're going to receive, those updates, so that as they continue to get published, as new products are coming out, our content team will aggressively push that content down to your instance so that you have a clear representation of what truly is this model at a product detail layer and at a model detail layer. One other piece we bring in, and this has really historically plagued anyone who's operated a CMDB, is that we know that classification has historically been highly arbitrary. I get a list of classes, I get a list of model categories, and when I do that first import, I need to relate which ones are computers, which ones are load balancers, but there's no guidance. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I nested a bunch of computers under IP device because, well, they have IP addresses. We're bringing in a value we call device type. And device type we've aligned to the global standard, the United Nations Standard Product and Service Code, UNSPSC. This is a database of about 200,000 line items, everything from livestock and seeds to IT equipment. Okay, so that when a manufacturer creates that new product and that new model, they code it to this global standard. We are bringing that very same global standard into your ServiceNow instance. Now you have a brand new attribute and an effective way to report on how many load balancers do I have? How many IP routers do I have? How many notebook or tablets do I have? And that's based on what this object was designed to be, not how we contextually loaded it into our CMDB. We are not going to alter any design or the way you've loaded information. We're going to bring you a net new attribute to report on and say, regardless of how I'm managing my data, this is what I truly actually have. Next slide, please. So this is a view Ryan, you can build this one out. But this is really a view of that content service, right? The library sits down on the customer's instance, and you receive that weekly feed. Now, if there is products or information that we don't have in our content service, you have the opportunity to send that back to our content research team. They validate and proof the update, and they send it down. Now, this might not necessarily be that the product is missing, but this may be that I have a discovery tool or an import, and I had an alias for how this was reported. I have a long history with ServiceNow. I was an early customer from 2009 to 2012. One of the issues I had when I was in charge of a CMDB was I had 10 different discovery tools creating records. And I actually had 16 different values that represented Hewlett-Packard, H-P, H-P. I needed this catalog of aliases or mappings. And that's part of what's coming down the content service feed, is all of those aliases that would bring me down to one standard value for Hewlett-Packard that I have in my database. Next slide, please. Again, really excited about this functionality coming forward in HAM, and we want that to extend into the mobile functions as well. So we've seen fantastic pieces around normalization, but here's a great way. Let's bring a mobile feature in to audit my active physical asset environment. So I want to be able to open up my mobile device or even schedule it ahead on the platform and do a batch scan of the physical objects in any stock room or any location in my ServiceNow instance. And I want a full line item reconciliation about what did I expect to find, what did I find in that place, and also get automatic updates. If I found something and it listed a different stock room or a different location, When I scan it and upload it, I want it to automatically update to where I physically confirmed. This scanning works offline and online. It also allows me to have multiple people write into an audit record. So if I'm doing something like a wall-to-wall audit of an office or preparing for a move, I can have 2, 3, 10 technicians scanning and writing to the same audit record to bring that data actually in. Next slide, please. Okay, so we want to, again, I touched on this one a little earlier, so I'll move through it, but it's not just about the mobile experiences for our agents, it's also bringing that experience into the end user. So this is the example of viewing that hardware that's assigned to me, creating the incident ticket. It's just that simple. Click a button, add my detail, it's sent into ServiceNow, and the ticket is generated. Next slide, please. This is a great opportunity here of what we call better together, of how we extend that value. So when I touched on the life cycle data coming from normalization, we know there's other areas of the business that want to be able to consume that in different views. Again, we look at our model and our asset data being so central to driving other process areas. In our technology portfolio, which is part of APM, they offer a top-down visual representation, timeline-based, of my life cycle data coming from my hardware models. They're linking this to the services those models are delivering. So now I can build a risk profile that if I'm running a server model and it's approaching its end of life next fiscal year, I now have a view that gives me the visibility to be able to plan that if I want to maintain a healthy service, I want to be able to spin up a refresh for those underlying objects. So this is the dependency of the accurate data, the visibility to strategically act and plan, either to minimize downtime or reduce the risk of that aging hardware. Next slide, please. So one of the pieces that we really want to focus on here in HAM is we said, listen, we want that better way to workflow. We want to be able to give prescriptive guidance to our customers. We are bringing in what we call asset flows. These are standard practice or leading practice workflows for a specific outcome. In Paris, we are giving you pre-designed workflows for hardware asset disposal, bulk stock order, and standard hardware request. Now, all of these tasks that we have built in are what we have designed to say this will take the process from end to end. So in my disposal, this is the planning of the assets, it's the gathering of them, it's the scheduling with the vendor, coordinating the pickup, verifying the pickup, and then getting that disposal documentation. All of those tasks pre-built for you. We've also built in automation so that if the asset record's related, when you click complete, the asset will automatically update. We have removed any manual burden for manual update of your technical staff when you're completing tasks in this workflow. So really what we're saying is, did you do what the ticket told you to do, and was the right asset related? If yes, we're going to take care of that asset. The asset comes along for the ride. Now, we put that this is a standard practice because we built this into our low-code flow designer technology. So that if you want to add additional tasking, if you say, yep, but I have an internal compliance need that I need to shred hard drives on site, you can copy our flow, add that task in through Flow Designer, which is a drag and drop format, and you have now optimized to that best practice by really only configuring one requirement. So you're starting from a position of strength, you still get all of the automated updates, and you have the ability to configure to fit your needs. We look at these flows as a great opportunity to lift maturity for our customers, and every release coming forward, we will be addressing more advanced workflows. Our opportunity for Paris is let us improve the core lifecycle, which is why we put heavy emphasis on the inputs being a request and stock order, and the outputs being disposal. But you will see more advanced flows from us in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, asset automated updates here. So we said, great, the workflows allow us to cap that front and back end, but what about the overlap with these ITSM tickets that we've had in our instances? I have hardware CI records, they're related to assets. I have, ripple effects of inaccuracy of updates being skipped, maybe discovery's not finding everything. So in Paris, we are bringing you asset tasks. When you turn on HAM, asset tasks activate automatically behind the incident, change, and work order tickets. We extend that same no more manual update to these tickets as well. So when we go through deployment and swap or retirement scenarios, the hardware CI, the hardware asset, your software allocations, and your maintenance contracts will automatically update. Let's take a quick example on the screen. This is an incident ticket for a broken laptop. Someone dropped it, they got a replacement. We already know the broken CI from when they called in. What the resolver needs to do here is initiate their asset action, a swap. They name the new device going in the hands of the computer. So they search and find it, and then they click resolve. When they do that, we update the hardware, the broken CI, the broken asset. We transfer the software to the new device, and we also transfer that active date for the maintenance contract from the old device to the new. All from them saying, I did a swap, here's the new device, resolve. This is going to free up tremendous time for our technicians to be able to focus on the customer or focus on their infrastructure or network environments, to use their expertise to manage their estates, and we're going to take care of all the background record updates. The emphasis for the operational teams, though, is did you do what you say you did in the ticket, and is the right object related? If yes, we will take on that manual update. Next slide, please. So I touched a little bit about this earlier, but again, we want to make sure that we're managing those outcomes through HAM, through all of this automation, from the prescriptive flows to the automated tasks to the normalization. Let's get that command center view into our asset managers. We're putting heavy focus on model management, procurement, inventory management, and end of life as being dedicated tabs on this dashboard with specific reporting to go solve the issues of today in your asset estate. So this again is powered by our advanced reporting engine performance analytics. And we want this to really drive our asset managers to be really those commanders of their asset estate. Okay. So next slide, please. Okay, again, want to revisit this. When we look at HAM, when we look at what's coming in, the lift of that brand new capability on top of what's in place today is automating and driving prescriptive process, is automating and taking away that manual burden or risk of error from my ticketing that's in place today. It's normalization to clean that model estate and give me roadmap visibility to life cycles that matter to my models. It's categorization and reporting that we're getting in, and now it's that actionable audit also coming from mobile. Okay. So it really drives the, well, again, why do companies choose ServiceNow? The power of the platform. When we see this new, highly accurate, highly automated asset environment, all things of value are possible, whether we're optimizing cost, strengthening policies, reducing risk. We really want this to be the motion that drives our maturity forward. Next slide, please. Okay. So Ryan, one piece to call out here again, when we see, we hear from customers, we hear about this challenging, the footprint changing, we hear about cost-cutting initiatives, we hear about M&As going on, we hear about security initiatives. We want all of these HAM features to drive that higher level maturity and really put us in the driver's seat for being that information hub for our business. I think we have another poll to come up here, and then I'd love to advance into that next piece.
Sounds good. So thank you very much, Eric. That was a lot of good information. I'm sure people will have, questions, and we'll certainly try to get to as many of those as we can. Before I flash, it looks like the poll is up. So great. Thank you very much. Yvette, anything to add on this slide in terms of, kind of events, compelling events that you come across at your clients, in particular on the need for hardware asset management?
Yeah, I see a lot of M&A, which is usually definitely unplanned. But when we're in spreadsheets, it makes it a lot harder for us to gather that data when I'm working with clients. Really, it's going to have a lot to do with auditing, and sometimes with things like this whole workforce moving remote. When we all went remote, I noticed there was a huge impact on asset management and the fact that we probably should have done a better job. Simply because now everyone is at home and who knows what they took.
Right. Yeah, plenty of opportunity and business case, I guess you could say, for hardware asset management. So yeah, so we do have a poll up on your screen. Hopefully you can see it. If you're in the web version, it sounds like some of you are having trouble seeing the poll, so apologies for that. But we saw some results last time, so hopefully you should be able to see this one. So Eric and Yvette, as maybe Eric, let's start with you. In terms of challenges you've come across talking to customers in your previous life, or, when you were building HAM, what were some of the things that you saw that, the need behind hardware asset management? What are you expecting a lot of the audience to share?
Yeah, I love these responses. I want to see where the percentages come out, Ryan, because I would just say all of these. But, efficiently being able to work through, and so many organizations that are segmented, we see server groups working in different ways than network groups. When they're doing things like common requests, they're doing break fixes, even end user devices. So being able to have that standard practice and that alignment of what it takes to track our assets and really keeping them up to date, it's kind of like that burden that we never really escape. As if we have that dependable system of accuracy, I often equate it, it's like electricity or good Wi-Fi, right? We love it when we have it, and we don't really appreciate it until it's gone. So this is about what can we do for that day in, day out sequencing to make our lives better and lift the value that we deliver back to our business.
Absolutely. So it looks like some of the poll results are in. Yvette, is this kind of what you're expecting as well?
It was. What I hear the most is, how do I automate these day-to-day tasks so that it takes me less time and it's more efficient and more accurate? And that's pretty much exactly what I was expecting from this poll result. Is that really seems to be where people struggle, followed by my data's bad. That's the next thing I hear. Or the data that's in the CMDB in my assets, we don't have synchronous processes. So the data tends to get out of sync, and then poof, they don't really know what's going on with anything. So those top three are what I was expecting here.
Excellent. Well, yeah, the good news is this is right in our wheelhouse, kind of what Eric just walked us through in terms of automating tasks through that life cycle, keeping those asset records accurate by automating them, right? Taking the human error and, accidental entry accuracy out of the equation, which is good news. So excellent. Well, thanks everyone for participating in that poll. Very, very insightful. So Eric, Yvette, you guys mind sharing, I guess, maybe Eric, let's talk about Lowe's. Do you want to share Lowe's?
Yeah, Lowe's is a great success story, right? This is a company that's really dedicated towards maturing specifically their hardware asset management journey, right? So capabilities, features, they were one of our design partners for a lot of these things coming across, and then being able to say, we want standard ways to operate. We want to be able to arm our technicians with mobile capabilities. One of the things I'll call out is we talk so much about standard process. Standard process really fits that majority of the time scenario. We always have conditional exceptions. And I'll give you a great example. For the majority of their break fix repairs, they get shipped back to a central depot from the stores, right? But what we also encounter is that on an exception basis, sometimes they need to be able to transfer inventory from store to store versus at central depot only to store. So being able to condition maybe an override or a nice to have feature or that conditional task off your flow allows you to service those niche cases, but also then have my standard operating for that 95% of the time where we're just pushing that workflow, pushing that traffic, making sure we get the automated accuracy. And I think that what that really emphasizes to our customers is when you're thinking about our process, yes, we always have exceptions. Yes, we always have conditions for what we need to plan to. But what is that standard process? What's that standard procedure we're trying to execute to get the dependable result? And they're a shining case of that. They've seen efficiencies in their field service workforce. They've seen efficiencies in their infrastructure as well by adopting common process.
Right. And then by contrast, this is a very recent example. Just a few weeks ago, we saw in the media. Do you mind sharing a little bit of background about what the story is?
Yeah. It's about every month or so, the new articles seem to pop up around organizations that just have the risk of not knowing what they have. We saw this sky betting article come across where this was an employee within IT that was really just selling out laptops and from eBay. And a lot of these weren't even aged units. They were direct orders that they were buying out, selling it on eBay, getting direct payment through electronic payment. And the company, because they didn't have that visibility into what process should look like, what assets are coming in, this was allowed to operate for almost a year. So again, these are the gotcha stories that we all want to avoid. And the way we do that is let's put a standard plan in place. Let's account for the exceptions, of course, but let's be able to understand, do we know what we have, and be able to have the ability to prove it as well.
Right. And a lot of the times it's not blatant fraud like this extreme case.
No.
Sometimes it's, just not knowing you don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know. So I guess, Yvette, you've worked with hundreds of clients, maybe thousands, I'm not sure, but in your, in your career, what have you seen, in terms of, where it's been a pretty like eye-opening, yes, you guys need hardware asset management and you need it yesterday. Any stories come to mind? Anonymous, of course.
I do. I have an anonymous story that comes top of mind when we talk about this. Is I had a client that really wasn't malicious. They were trying to do the right thing. And due to some changes in staffing, some things fell through the cracks. So when I was asking where all the hardware was, they really couldn't give me a good answer. So ultimately, they took me on a journey through their facility to a locked room in which I discovered 600 laptops, back floor to ceiling. So imagine all the broken screens there. And it was simply because they didn't know what to do with them. So they weren't hoarding them or trying to hide them and sell them. In fact, they were actually part of their corporate donation strategy, except the person who did the donations had been, he was a leaver in the organization, and nobody backfilled his role and nobody took over the donation. So they just kept acquiring these disposed items to the point where it became a problem because we then had to figure out what to do with them. And better hardware asset management would not have just thrown them into a retired state with the assumption that someone took care of them. We actually would have had a good process in place, which is what we ended up building.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I mean, 600 laptops, that's just one use case, right? Times, say it's $2,000 a laptop, that's 1.2 million or so. That's one use case. So right there, that's worth having a ham program in place. Eric, any other stories come to mind?
Yeah, I would just say, way too many, Ryan. What I would call out is it doesn't even have to be on the active environment either. Back when I was a customer, we had just the simple activity of they had 16 unique ERP systems that this organization was going through massive M&A and consolidation, right? So they bought all these businesses. They needed to align and get on global process and global platform, and being able to stand up a centralized database and say, this is our data standard, and this is the information we want to report in, allowed for the employees to really not see any difference on the front end of their order and fulfillment process, while in the back end they were doing this scheduled migration and sunsetting of systems. The user was just coming to the portal, they were submitting their request, it went through the approval, on the back end it was integrating out to the appropriate system. So this is how they kept customers, really consuming this service and really giving that seamless experience on the front end, while on the back end, there was a massive data migration and tool migration effort going on. So we want to think about what are those engagement experiences with our employees, and how do we begin to continue to build that dependency of their expectation. We want these things to be simple. We want them to be repeatable. From a agent or a fulfiller perspective, they need to be practical so that we can scale at speed. And that's really what we're after.
Right. Exactly. Well, yeah. Thank you both for sharing those stories. I'm sure we could be here all day talking about stories and then the need for ham. I know, just real quickly in my consulting experience, working with companies who are looking to refresh their storage footprint, after all those storage arrays and things are end of life, end of support, end of extended support, that the support costs for those go up quite a bit. And so, you're always looking to understand what is in the customer data center, what, from a backup storage perspective, what's the anticipated end of life dates, when are those support costs going to go up? So just having that information like we have here in hardware asset management, just that one use case on the retirement phase, extremely valuable for customers to get in front of. Great ROI in terms of, understanding what's coming up on support, avoid those support risks, as well as, risks to the business service itself that those, that hardware might be supporting that, when we talk about, know what your business is running on, it's that hardware. So making sure it's current, up to date, looking for those refresh opportunities. So I know we're winding down on time, so I will try to get to Q&A here, but just real quick, just to recap what Yvette and Eric shared with us today. HAM's really required to run your digital business effectively. Very tough to run, a business in this day and age, if you don't know what it's running on. So having that visibility, knowing, from automating that IT lifecycle on a single platform, you want to be doing it with that central CMDB, that central source of record. You want to do hardware asset management, the same place you're planning IT, operating IT, securing IT, servicing IT, retiring IT, all in that one place. That single data model is what makes those workflows possible. And to get to outcomes, this stuff isn't always easy, right? So you can have a great technology, but you want to have the right program, the right governance, the right process, the right leading practices. We offer some prescriptive workflows out of the box, and we'll continue to add those. But partnering with a partner like ITS, who's been doing this for a long time, is really the key to help you, get the most out of this Ferrari. Make sure you're using it in the best way possible, and make sure that those workflows, fit your business, whatever industry and vertical that may be. So here's some more information on ITS. A website you can go there to engage Yvette and her team, itsdelivers.com/next steps. Also, they have a free giveaway. I hear they're giving away a Tesla. No, just kidding. But maybe it's a Matchbox car. But yeah, there's a free giveaway there. So make sure you go check that out if you want to get started on your ham journey. Also, as a reminder, we had Knowledge 2020 earlier this year. Great turnout. 3,600 of you from the ITAM space, joined us. ITS Partners was on as well. Yvette did a session. So, those sessions are still available today on demand, knowledge.servicenow.com. So definitely check those out if you want to do a quick replay in case you missed it. We also have Guerrilla guides that cover IT asset management overall, so both software asset management and hardware asset management, as well as your hybrid clouds. So if you're just getting started on the journey, you need a playbook, want to understand how to build the business case, try to figure out where to get started, right? Start small, don't boil the ocean, manageable wins. These are great resources for you. As well as we have other on-demand webinars available on the ServiceNow.com events website. Just go to on demand and you'll see the on-demand webinars from the ITAM perspective. So I saw a number of questions coming in the chat as we were presenting. So Eric, maybe I'll just cherry pick a few that I saw some themes. So there's a few questions on the content library. They were questions ranging from, is it the same library as SAM? Is content service an extra charge? And then how the model categories work. So for example, can I track monitors? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Ryan, I'm going to hit a couple of those, right? So number one, the content service team, while we sit under the same business unit with SAM, we have our own content resources. They do work within the same team, but the HAM and SAM, people curating that content, they are directly working on their own particular content. So that means that the formatting is consistent, the delivery mechanism is consistent, but we really have those specialists that can dig into rationalize and validate hardware models versus software models. So we do have our own dedicated resources that are updating and providing that weekly feed of new content down to our instances. The second piece I will call out is that the HAM product, it is available in Paris, right? So as the Paris release, it is not backwards compatible, so it is Paris going forward. It is accessible via the ServiceNow store, and it can be requested and you can procure licensing that way through your account team. And that would include the normalization, the flows, the tasks, the inventory audit via mobile, and the dashboards. Now, the last piece I'll call out about model categories, and I also saw some questions on the UNSPSC. We're bringing that data through the content feed. Okay, so you're going to get that back-end library that we are rationalizing your model records to. We are not overriding the data that you have input in from the standpoint of if I overwrite your model number or model name, the next time you run your discovery or import, you're going to create a duplicate record. We want to be able to sync your existing content as you discover it, as you import it, to that standard value. And now we would see our customers that when they really want to be able to say, hey, how many of that iPhone 11X Pro do I have in my estate? They can be able to run the report on the normalized product or even down to the normalized manufacturer part number.
Awesome. And then Yvette, I saw some questions around, how to get started in IT asset management. I saw some questions on, what's the right size of a team to have, say, a ham admin, 1, 2, 10 people. And then also, what's the best place to start in terms of going about cleaning a CMDB and maintaining that data accuracy. I know that's a lot to cover, but I guess what would your advice be on folks getting started and sizing teams and things like that?
What I would suggest to anybody when they're getting started is to start looking at what people in the organization are doing. So define what your initial outcome or your goal is for an asset management project. And setting up a program, then find out who's actually doing some of the asset work. You're going to find that there are people in the organization who are probably already doing asset work and maybe leveraging some of that. If they've got processes documented, that's great. I would then start focusing on getting your processes built out, either with a partner or with ServiceNow, with someone. It's really easier to start with a template than it is to start from scratch when we're talking about asset management process, because there's a lot of best practice that's already been worked through, save you some time and effort. When we're talking about size of team, that's really dependent on how much effort you want to put into your asset management program. So it's hard for me just to give an optimal number without having a little bit more detail. Ultimately, what I'm going to suggest is to start figuring out where they want to end up and work backwards from there.
That's good advice. I like that. Eric, I saw a few questions on hooking into existing ERP systems from a procurement perspective. So I don't know if you want to share that.
Yeah, Ryan. I'll call this out as we're wrapping up here, right? And I think that a lot of the Q&A, we will get to the questions offline, so expect responses in the email. But what I'll call out for that is we do align with ServiceNow's new integration hub. So this is really a way to define integrations. I know that in Paris, SAP Ariba is one that's coming online. It's a great way for our partners to create integrations for ERP systems, scanning systems, or even integrating disposal vendors, being able to connect that portal for scheduling or even reporting, right? So being able to leverage that framework allows for that, really lifts the burden of having to do the transformation mapping to the destination attributes. But really, if customers are interested in integrations, get with your partners, get with our ServiceNow Outcomes team, and dig in a little bit towards what's coming online with Integration Hub. It's a tremendous resource. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, I know we're already over time, so thank you both for joining us today to speak and share what's new on hardware asset management and the need for it. I think hopefully is valuable for the whole audience here. And if we did not get to your questions, we will definitely try to reach out directly and answer them offline. So thank you everyone for joining from the audience. Really appreciate you taking the time. You should receive a follow-up email in a couple days just with some links. The presentation will be there. So you can have that if you want to share that with your colleagues internally and some of the resources we talked about here today. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day.